An Egret-class sloop was ordered on the 5th of March 1937 from William Denny and Brothers of Dumbarton as part of the 1936 construction program. She was laid down there on the 16th of June 1937 and was originally named Heron. She was renamed Auckland and launched on the 30th of June 1938. She was designed as a general-purpose vehicle and intended for use as a survey ship around New Zealand. However, with the approach of war, Auckland was modified during her build for service as a convoy escort and anti-submarine warfare ship. She was completed on November 1938. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Auckland was stationed in Simonstown in South Africa. She was briefly employed in hunting for raiders in the South Atlantic before returning to the UK with convoy SL9. In January 1940, Auckland was stationed at Rosyth, serving as an escort to the East Coast convoys in the North Sea. In April, Auckland took part in Operation Primrose, a planned landing in Norway, and later assisted in the evacuation of troops from Namsos and Åndalsnes. On the 16th of April 1940, Auckland, in company with 3 other sloops, sailed with 700 advanced troops who were landed in Åndalsnes in Norway on the 17th of that month. In May of that year, HMS Auckland and the cruiser HMS Calcutta evacuated nearly 1,000 troops of the rear guard from Åndalsnes. In May, Auckland was then transferred to the Mediterranean for service in the Red Sea. After a further refit in January 1941, Auckland joined the Mediterranean Fleet. In April, she was involved in action in the Castle Strait, defending a troop convoy against an attack by Italian destroyers. In May, she was escorting convoys to Tobruk, which was under siege by Axis forces in North Africa. The Tobruk Run, colloquially known as the Tobruk Ferry, was a series of convoy and naval supply operations that were made with some interruptions from April to December 1941, and which kept the garrison of Tobruk supplied and able to resist Axis attacks and the ongoing siege. The operation was not easy, and the Mediterranean Fleet, as well as the Merchant Navy, suffered heavy losses. It was also a continuous drain on the Royal Air Force, which was expected to give air cover to convoys as far west as possible. These were important reasons why, in January 1942, the decision was made not to defend Tobruk again should a siege situation develop, and instead withdraw further east. The work of the fleet on the Tobruk Run fell on the unsung heroes of the naval war: elderly destroyers, sloops, small minesweepers and auxiliaries, such as armed boarding vessels. It wasn't glamorous, it was constant, and it was immensely dangerous. These vessels, together with the Royal Australian Navy's first destroyer flotilla, formed an important part of the squadron known as the Scrap Iron Flotilla, as many of the vessels had reached a respectable age. The V and W class destroyers assigned by the Royal Australian Navy to the operation dated back to 1916. Following a period of heavy losses between the start of the siege of Tobruk on the 12th of April and the 1st of June 1941, convoys into Tobruk were suspended. A total of 8 vessels had been lost in this period, clearly a rate that was unsustainable. As a consequence of these losses, from the 7th of June, Admiral Cunningham ordered that only destroyers were allowed on high-speed nighttime runs. The attack and sinking of the HMS Auckland is a somewhat confusing affair. The report that follows is based primarily on the very detailed Italian war diary for 5A Squadron and the AAR of Parramatta. At 17:30 hours Cairo time, two formations of 16 Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers were reported, which aligned with the German report that 32 Stuka were airborne. They split with 2/3 attacking HMS Auckland and 1/3 HMAS Parramatta, which has several misses to the starboard. Here is the Italian report, also quoted in the German daily report. At 10:25 hours Axis time, they instead found and attacked formation of what they believed to be a 10,000 tonne and a 7,000 tonne cruiser and a 3,000 tonne tanker, and believed to have sunk the New Zealand anti-aircraft cruiser Auckland. Subsequently confirmed by POW interrogations, no such vessel existed. However, and it is not clear why such a claim was made. But given the spelling, this would have been HMS Auckland, and the continued insistence on it being a cruiser is likely an insistence of confirmation bias on the Italian side. At 17:50 hours Cairo time, HMAS Parramatta reported HMS Auckland disappearing in brown smoke and lightly hit. When emerging from the smoke, HMS Auckland headed straight for HMAS Parramatta, who had to take evasive action. When passing it, it was noted on board HMAS Parramatta that HMS Auckland was a wreck abaft, having lost her stern completely and on fire, but with her forward guns still firing. All the while, the dive bombers continued to attack for another 15 minutes. HMS Auckland then stopped and her crew were abandoning her, while some of her officers destroyed confidential material and HMAS Parramatta commenced rescue operations. At 18:20 hours Cairo time, a high-level bombing attack by 6 SM-79s developed, as HMAS Parramatta had HMS Auckland survivors around her screws and could not move, but had to endure the attack. These were probably 5 SM-79s of 8O Stormo, which had left at 17:30 or 16:30 with an escort of G-50 fighters. Sadly, at 18:22 hours Cairo time, HMS Auckland rolled over and sank, after what seems to have been a boiler explosion, breaking her back. The bombers were not impressed by HMAS Parramatta's AA gunnery and pressed home the attack, executing shallow dive bombing from 5,000 feet and scoring near misses which lifted the sloop a foot or two out of the water. The War Diary of the Afrika Korps only notes that formations of the Luftwaffe succeeded with several direct hits and attacks on 2 cruisers and a tanker, sinking the tanker, and that one cruiser was not found later, implying it had also been sunk. The War Diary of the Kriegsmarine is a bit sceptical and suspects that the sunk cruiser might have been a destroyer, but was excited about a 500 kg bomb hit on a heavy cruiser. Of Auckland's crew of 200, 38 men died either during or after the attack, with the HMAS Parramatta burying 2 at sea and delivering another 20 who were so severely wounded that they could not walk. Almost half of the fatal casualties fell on the engine room crew. Here is a list of those young, brave men who gave their lives to rid the world of tyranny. May they never be forgotten.